Now, from the Signature Bank Studios.
Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
All right, join the Will County GOP in their Freedom Day dinner on Friday, August 9th at Tuscany Falls Banquet in Mokina, Illinois. You will have the opportunity to meet the Illinois RNC National Committeeman, Dean White, and enjoy a night of dinner and dancing. Love when politicians dance. For more information or to purchase your tickets, visit willcountygop.com. That's willcountygop.com.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. How long does acting director of the Secret Service Ronald Rowe survive after what I thought was embarrassing testimony this week before the Senate Judiciary Committee, combined with the fact that, as we talked about with Julie Kelly yesterday, we're awaiting a Inspector General report from Department of Homeland Security's Inspector General, Joseph Kafari, that will apparently document failures by Secret Service of the sort that we saw occur on July 13th that predate July 13th by some time. So they were aware that they were having problems, and yet those problems went unresolved. JustTheNews.com reporting yesterday, the IG at Homeland Security is about to drop a fresh bombshell certain to impact the investigation of the near assassination. Congress was briefed this week that months before the assassination attempt on Trump, Secret Service managers were warned by the Homeland Inspector General about serious deficiencies, including communication woes with local police partners and inadequate training for agents who conducted security sweeps at events for protectees, according to sources. Well, gee, those sound like they're particularly relevant, don't they, in the wake of what transpired? And again, Rowe's back and forth with Josh Hawley in particular will live in infamy. If you thought that the way that Kim Cheadle, the recently resigned director of Secret Service, handled the congressional committee appearance was a good example of what not to do, this is another such example. You need to be prepared with an answer about accountability 3 weeks after an incident of this import, and he wasn't.
So, Senator, we're when we post up, our methodology is to look at things that can see in on our protectees, so that they can provide that coverage.
But why is there not a Secret Service counter sniper there with clear line of sight? That roof has a clear line of sight to the former president. Why didn't you put a Secret Service counter sniper there? The Secret Service's counter sniper role is to neutralize those threats that are looking in on us from where the protectee is, not necessarily you think maybe position. You might want to revise that protocol in light of what happened here?
They were protecting the principal, and I think the
principal got shot.
Understand that, sir.
So do you think you might want to revise the protocol? Let me ask you this. Who was the lead site agent who made the decision to leave the AGR building completely outside of the security perimeter? Who was that?
Senator, I cannot give you that name. This person is operational. They're still doing investigations. They're still doing protective visits.
Have they been relieved of duty?
Senator, they have not been relieved of duty. I know their name, by the way.
Why have they not been relieved of duty?
They are still cooperating, not only being interviewed by the FBI, but also by our Office of Professional Responsibility. And we will let the facts of the mission assurance and any further investigations play out.
Isn't the fact that a former president was shot, that a good American is dead, that other Americans were critically wounded, isn't that enough mission failure for you to say that the person who decided that building should not be in the security perimeter probably ought to be stepped down?
Senator, I think you're using the word decided, and I think we need to allow the investigation play out to include.
Who did make the decision then? If it wasn't the lead site agent, who made the decision not to put that in the security perimeter?
Senator, you're zeroing in on one particular agent. I want to find out exactly what was the entire decision process. So I think I want to be neutral and make sure that we get to the bottom of it and interview everybody in order to determine if there was more than one person who perhaps exercised bad judgment.
Well, sure. My question is, why don't you relieve everybody of duty who made bad judgment? So, yeah, you're right. I am zeroing in on somebody. I'm trying to find somebody who's accountable here.
And
you're telling me that the person who made the decision not to include this in the perimeter has not been relieved of duty. What about the person who's in charge of the interoperability of radio frequencies between local law enforcement and Secret Service? Has that person been relieved of duty?
No, Senator, because interoperability is a challenge, is a greater challenge than just one person. On that day, we had a counterpart system. It failed.
As the person who made the decision to send Donald Trump onto stage knowing that you had a security situation, has that person been relieved of duty?
No, sir, they haven't.
Has the person who decided not to pull the former president off of stage when you knew that, in your words, the locals were working a serious security situation, has that person been relieved of duty?
No, sir. Again, I refer you back to my original answer that we are investigating this through a mission assurance. And as opposed to zeroing in on one,
what more do you need to investigate to know
exactly what the decision-making process was? What more do you need to investigate
to know that there were critical enough failures that some individuals ought to be held accountable? I mean, what more do you need to know?
What I need to know is exactly what happened, and I need my investigators to do their job. And I cannot.
A lot of people didn't do their jobs.
I cannot put my thumb on the scale. Otherwise,
what do you mean put your thumb on the scale?
You're asking me, Senator, to completely make a rush to judgment about somebody failing. I acknowledge this was a failure of the Secret Service.
Is it not prima facie that somebody has failed? A former president was shot.
Sir, this could have been our Texas school book depository. I have lost sleep over that for the last 17 days,
then
just like you have.
Somebody to
and I will
hold
tell
them
you,
accountable.
Senator, I will tell you, Senator, that I will not rush to judgment, that people will be held accountable, and I will do so with integrity and not rush to judgment and put people unfairly persecuted.
Unfairly persecuted?
Unfairly,
We've got people who are
we
dead.
have to be able to have a proper investigation into this.
Yes, the lead site agent had responsibility for the sloped roof from which the assassin fired, but let's not rush to judgment. Yes, the agent had that had the responsibility to ensure the interoperability of the communication systems between Secret Service and local law enforcement failed. Rather than interoperable, the comms were inoperable, but let's not rush to judgment. Yes, the Secret Service was alerted to a security issue of an individual with a rangefinder and decided not to pull Trump off stage, but let's not rush to judgment. Yes, the local law enforcement offered the use of drones as part of the security coverage for that day. Secret Service didn't take them up on it. Acting Director Rowe said the agency probably should have, but let's not rush to judgment. And to even suggest anyone lose their job is to persecute the good men and women of the Secret Service, and Acting Director Rowe won't have it. Okay. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Mike Olson, who's a retired Secret Service agent. Mike, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
You bet. Nice to be with you again, Dan and Amy.
Your review of Acting Director Rowe's offerings.
I've been disappointed, to be frank, just in general, from the events of the last couple of weeks, from a leadership level. And, you know, one of the things that struck me that you didn't talk about there was basically a open checkbook offered by Senator Lindsey Graham about resources, and does the Secret Service need resources? And there was a very simple three-letter answer to that, and the word was yes. Some of these things that were highlighted are not necessarily new, and I'm not sharing any secrets here or anything like that. These are things that have been vulnerabilities or gaps in how protection needs to be done for many, many, many years. And so it's something that could have been being worked on, and resources could have been being asked for. And once again, resources were, I don't know if they were genuinely being offered by the senator, but they were absolutely being figuratively offered. And there was not an immediate acceptance of, yes, there is a deficiency, and there is a reason then that the Secret Service has to utilize outside resources, which effectively requires us to cede control of some of that operational planning, and it's known. And so, and the other thing, to answer your question, Dan, is Secret Service is very much a chain of command. It's a paramilitary structure. There, regardless of who the site agent was, there was a lead agent that should have been there, that had more seniority, that was supposed to be overseeing the overall plan. There's a lot of redundancy in terms of supervision. Then there's an office supervisor. There may be a detail supervisor that should have been reviewing plans. So there's a very lengthy hierarchy of people that signed off on this.
Right, but if I could interrupt there, when there's a police-involved shooting in Chicago, the officers involved in that shooting, even if it's relatively obvious it was a good shoot, they are given desk duty pending the investigation. If they had communications with a superior officer, that person is involved, then they're usually put on paid leave as well, or paid desk duty as well. They take them offline, but that's not happening here.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and there should be no delay in this investigation. Everybody should have been taken offline immediately. Should have been flown down to Washington, D.C. In my humble opinion, I've been gone for about 6 years now, but they absolutely should have been brought before all these people that need to investigate. It could have been resolved, and things could have been figured out very quickly. So that obviously didn't happen because he said it. People are back out there and operational and things like that. So I agree that's a flaw when we're trying to get to the bottom of a very serious assassination attempt.
Since you're relatively recently gone, although a lot's happened in 6 years, just what people saw. I guess she was a Department of Homeland Security officer that looked like a cast member from Reno 911 trying to holster her gun a couple of times. The people have talked about, the disparity and the size of agents that need to be, commensurate with the size of the protectee and so forth in the case, just in just such these cases where you're willing to take a bullet for your protectee. And I just wonder, like, what was your experience on the way out and what you know about Secret Service today? I mean, do we have a problem where the culture has, as we've seen in so many other federal agencies, has focused more on things like identity politics and politics generally and lost some mission focus?
Dan, that's a fair question and it's an accurate one. And it's not just the Secret Service. I mean, I've spoken with colleagues that have retired from other agencies as recently as 2 days ago from another three-letter agency that's extremely concerned about the way things have gone, especially in our federal law enforcement entities. Spoken with other law enforcement, military. This degradation of just standards in general has in fact occurred. I was a physical training coordinator in the Secret Service, and there were times where, hey, we just couldn't get to that, or we didn't do this. There wasn't time, and that comes down to resources, and it comes down to leadership. If we need the money to be able to make sure that people can stay trained on a regular basis, stay physically fit, all that, then it needs to be budgeted for. It needs to be asked for. And if there's not a record of somebody asking for more and more resources over the last several years, then that's going to be part of this problem that's going to come out eventually, depending on how deep the investigation goes.
Well, according to Trump's people, they've been asking for extra Secret Service agents, and they haven't been getting them.
Yes, and if that's true, that's a major problem, because if the Secret Service hasn't turned around and pounded its fist at the Homeland Security office or the Secretary of Homeland Security's desk, screaming for more money and explaining why and putting themselves on the record, then the buck does stop with them, and it shouldn't, because they should have been asking for more. This is something that's been going on forever, and the threats get more and more real. We only need to listen to what the FBI has put out there publicly for us to explain all the international threats, both cyber and physical.
So, Rowe says, if this was a failure of imagination, including the failure to imagine that local law enforcement essentially would not do their job. I mean, it was sort of accepting responsibility while blaming a subordinate agency, which not impressive. But if you're in charge of the interoperability of comms, and you don't have interoperability of comms, you know that somebody you're putting in charge in an important post, like a counter sniper team, whatever local law enforcement role was supposed to play, then how do you go forward without some plan to make sure you're able to communicate with everyone under your charge on site?
Dan, it's an excellent question, and you kind of nailed it on the head with that post that's supposed to exist in a command post or a security room with the Secret Service is supposed to be staffed by a senior agent that's been on the job long enough to understand the criticality of communications. And we'll find out when this comes to light who was put on that post. The other thing that has to happen is these site agents or the lead agents that do the security plan are supposed to document exactly what their responsibility was, and that should have occurred for the local police as well. So if their responsibility was, hey, you need to be on that roof, well, then there should be a record of it. If there wasn't a record of it, then complacency has set in and/or incompetence, and that's another example of the degradation of things that have gone on here, because there should be a very easy trail that could be solved within a day of what happened here.
Do you know this? Do you know?
Yeah, we're all still waiting.
Do you know this Ronald Rowe guy, the acting director?
I do not. I think I vaguely remember his name from when I was on the job, but I do not personally know him. No.
I mean, there was a counter sniper who issued sent an email to all uniformed personnel that was reported by RealClearPolitics.com, essentially a whistleblower email saying, I'm going to continue speaking out until half a dozen supervisors are removed. One has, but we got 5 to go or something like this, or maybe it was 1 and we've got 4 to go. But he basically said, right now what we have is a cover your ass operation going on. That's what I saw with Rowe's testimony. And I wonder how optimistic you are that we, being the American people, are ever going to get a full and credible evidence-based accounting of what happened.
I think here's what I'm truly worried about is that there's going to be an effort to go after low-hanging fruit. In other words, let's find the site agent itself that did this and hang them out to dry, because what I said to you at the beginning is there is a very lengthy chain of command of supervisors that have been on the job much longer that signed off on this plan, and that is their job. At some point, people come on the job, they have to start to learn. I would say the size of the Trump rally event is not a learning spot, but I don't know who they put there. But I'm concerned that if we don't get into the actual what leadership has done over the years in order to improve the agency, that's a real answer. Then this problem is going to continue, and if that doesn't get flushed out, and what scares me is what the new acting director didn't say. Again, when I asked by Senator Lindsey Graham, was, do you need more resources? My answer immediately would have been yes, absolutely, unequivocally yes, and here's why. Because if you want us to have more control of all this, we still need to work with locals, still need to work with our state entities. There's no question. But if you want that control of these further middle perimeters, softer perimeters, then you need to put Secret Service people there. And if you don't have the resources to staff that, that's a problem. And then the communication things. So this will continue if you're can't even brave enough to say, yes, we need more resources.
Mike Olson, retired Secret Service agent. Mike, thank you for your time again. Appreciate it.
Hey, you're welcome. Take care.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy on the AM 560 The Answer mobile app. Just text the word app to 64636 to download the app today.
From breaking news and weather across the country to insight from the brightest minds in conservative